Today's lesson is on determining the difference between half steps and whole steps. First of all, let's define some terms. In Western music, a half step is the smallest interval between two pitches. When we play a bunch of half steps together consecutively, it creates a chromatic scale. That would be playing every black key and white key on the piano, one right after another, playing each step that is right next to each other, and it sounds like this. Each of those intervals is called a half step. Usually in music, we write half steps in the form of minor seconds. Now, a half step doesn't have to be going down like a minor second does when we sing our diatonic intervals. Sometimes they can be going up or down. But the most important thing to remember is that a half step is just from one key to the next key that's directly adjacent to it. With most keys on the piano, you have a half step in between the two white keys in the form of a black key. C goes up to C sharp, which then goes up to D. Or if you're going the other way, D goes down to D flat and then down to C. That's a series of two half steps. As the name might suggest, a whole step is just two half steps put together, going from one key and then skipping the key in between and going to the next key. So rather than going from C to C sharp, we would be going from C to D. That's my whole step. That's my half step. So the whole step is the same thing as a major second in music with a capital M. It's important to be able to identify these two intervals in music so that we can sing them correctly when we have them in music. So the purpose of this exercise in musictheory.net is to get you used to identifying whole steps and half steps in music. Let's take a look at some examples. So we have two notes here, and the most important thing we're going to need to be able to do is read them using our bass clef line and space names, G, B, D, F, A, and A, C, E, G. So we have a G sharp going to an A sharp, and we need to figure out, is that a minor second, a half step, or is that a major second, a whole step? Well, let's check our keyboard. The first note is G sharp. The second note is A sharp. And we have to ask ourselves, is there a key in between those two notes? Yes, there is. G, A sharp. So because there is a white key in between those two black keys, it has to be a whole step. It has to be a major second. And we got it correct. Next question is in treble clef, and it's going to switch back and forth on you, so make sure you're checking your clef each time. C sharp and D sharp. Let's find them. C sharp, D sharp, and then between the two keys is D. Because there's a note in the middle, once again, that's a major second, which is a whole step. Perfect. Now, one thing that you do want to make careful note of, and the most important thing to remember when you're determining whole steps or half steps, especially when you're not able to look at a piano keyboard like the one we've got here, is that there are some white key notes that are already a half step apart. Those are C and B. There's no black key in between them, so that's just a half step. Same story with E going up to F. No black key in between, so that's a half step on the piano. For shorthand, when we're writing whole steps and half steps, a half step is notated with a little caret symbol, a little triangle like that. So I'm going to mark that E and F and that B and C are half steps on the piano. The difference between every other key is a whole step, which I'm going to mark with this little square figure. That's important for us to know because even if we're not looking at the piano keyboard, we can still figure out whether a note to another note is a half step or a whole step using our knowledge of whether the half steps or whole steps are occurring on the piano. So this instance, we're given D sharp and E sharp. Now E doesn't have a black key, but E sharp is right here. It's actually the same as F. So they do have a note between them, and that would be a major second. That's a whole step. But here we'll start to get into some puzzlers. Now I'm looking to start at E sharp, here, same as F, and then F double sharp. A double sharp is the same thing as a sharp, but instead of moving up 1/2 step, I'm going to move up 2. So here's F, sharp, and double sharp. And as you can see, that's the same note as G, although it's spelled very ugly. There is still a black key in between them, however. So that's a major second, a whole step. We haven't got a half step yet, but let's see what keeps happening here. Now we've got an E sharp and an F sharp. E sharp is the same as F. F sharp is a black key, directly adjacent to one another, no note in between. That has to be a half step. That's a minor second. This process is very simple if you've got a piano keyboard in front of you. And this piano keyboard page can be found in your theory packet. It's on page 10, that lesson 3.2, right at the top of the page. Not exactly what this lesson is designed for, but super helpful anyway. Let's look at a couple more. Here's A. Go up a step to A sharp, which is labeled here. The next note above that is B. And there's A sharp to B, a minor second. So we're quickly and easily able to tell whether our notes are a half step or a whole step apart using our keyboard and our knowledge of half steps and whole steps.